Welcome to the long-awaited second edition of Hanson UnFiltered. Hanson UnFiltered is a program designed to bring you, the citizens of Hanson, some of the interesting news events that are happening in our great town. And here, my name is Bruce Young, and here is my co-host, Mr. Ben Fletcher, who is going to give us a citizen perspective on the various articles we will be discussing that are going to be coming before the October 7th town meeting, which will be held at 7:30 p.m. on October 7th at the Hanson Middle School. And if you are a voter in the town of Hanson, any voter is welcome to come to the town of Hanson, where you can discuss these articles, stand up, give your opinions, and also vote on the articles to come before you. So we invite you to come to that town meeting. And we will remind you again at the end of the program about that important town meeting. So we're going to discuss some of the more interesting and important articles, and Ben will be here to give his citizen perspective on these articles. And Ben, I'd like to start, take it out of order and start with what I think is the most important article to come before this town meeting, and it's Article 22, which could have a disastrous, the outcome of this article could have, depending on how it's voted, could have a disastrous financial effect on Hanson for many years to come. And here's the article. To see if the town of Hanson will rescind its vote on Article 18 of the October 1, 2018 special town meeting approving the amended regional school agreement with the Whitman-Hanson Regional School, or take any other action in relation thereto. It sounds simple, but as I'm sure you would like to know, as I'm sure all our viewers would like to know, is why are we coming before the town meeting to rescind the vote that we took a year ago?
That's a good question, Bruce. It's a question that I'm here today to ask you. Why is this happening now, a year into this initial question that was submitted over a year ago?
Okay, and when we came before that meeting, I'll try to explain it pretty simple. We were asked to approve a document, and I have it here with me. I shouldn't show it, but it's about a 13-page document that basically outlines how the Whitman-Hanson Regional School operates. Everything from organizing the school committee to who's on the school committee, on how the budget process operates. And one of the key factors is, and that's what we're going to be voting on, the reason why this is on the town meeting warrant, is how the assessment pie between the two towns, meaning the assessment pie, the net operating costs of the regional school are divided up between Whitman and Hanson. And in Whitman and Hanson's case, that comes to about $24 million in change. And there are now two assessment methods that can be used in dividing up that pie. And I brought together this neat little chart that can explain it to everybody. So here we go. I'll just put this out in front here for a second. And just explain it to everybody this way. From the past 60 years, since Whitman and Hanson decided to become a regional school system, going back to the days when we were only the high school, and bringing you up to the days from 1992 and beyond, when we became a pre-K through 12 district, we've always done it this way. We've used the student enrollment method, percentage method, for dividing up the pie. So the $24 million assessment for 2020, for example, was divided up this way. In October of the preceding year, Hanson students were 1,533 of the 3,815 total, representing 40.2%. And Whitman had 2,282 students, which resulted in 59.8%, which meant that Whitman was responsible for 59.8% of the 24 million, and Hanson was responsible for 40.2. Pretty simple, right? And for the past 60 years, everybody thought that that was a fair and equitable way of dividing up the town.
Right.
Because after all, we were a regional school district in a region without borders, devoted to teaching those children and giving them a great education. Well, along came the Equalized Education Bill, all right? And under the Equalized Education Bill, the DESC came up with another method of dividing up the pie, and that was called a statutory or wealth-based method.
Okay. When did this bill pass? Do you recall?
I believe it was originally in 1992, but then a letter went out to the regional school districts in 2007, reminding them that there were two methods. But of course, in our regional school agreement for the past 60 years, we've always gone by the percentage of the student population method. So when they came out with the statutory or wealth-based method, in addition to the foundation enrollment from the preceding year and how many children you have in the system, they took some ratios based on the statistics that get reported, I'm assuming, to the Department of Revenue every year, based on tax returns and also setting the tax rates in the town, which show the assessed valuations of properties. And they took various statistics and they molded those statistics into the student population and the foundation budget. And they decided that Hanson was a wealthier community than Whitman, based on those statistics. So instead of the 40.2% of the $24 million assessment that the two towns are responsible for, they said that Hanson should be really paying around 44.5%. And instead of 59.8% for Whitman, based on the student population, they should be paying 55.5%.
Well, Bruce, as you know, Hanson, being a Hanson resident, we're not as wealthy as some may think. I mean, we're paycheck to paycheck in our community as well.
Well, I understand that, and anybody who's lived in Hanson for a long period of time, like you and I, realize that. And I'll give you some little statistics later that show that we're not a wealthy community compared to towns like Norwell or Hingham or Cohasset or other towns such as that.
Very good.
But let me just flip this around to show you the effect that using that particular method would have on the town of Hanson. There's what the actual assessment to the two towns was in 2020 from the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District. $24,069,149. Now, used on the using this the student enrollment method, the Whitman-Hanson Regional School Committee, by law and by what's in the regional school agreement, set that assessment to the two towns based on what I just showed you, the 42.4% for Hanson. Hanson came out to roughly $9.7 million, and Whitman came out to $49.4 million. Okay, but tucked away in that regional school agreement that we actually approved a year ago, not knowing this was in there, was the new statutory method. Even though both of these methods are still legal and proper to use, and the fact that we've been using the student enrollment method for the past 60 years. We weren't told that it was in the agreement. We were told that there were basically some housekeeping issues that got taken care of, like deleting the Park Avenue school that was in there that's been closed for how many years now, I don't know, in Whitman, and adding the middle school.
No, also in Hanson, we recently closed the McQuon School as well, is that correct?
Yes, so that would be obviously coming out of the new agreement. So, what would that statutory method do? Well, using those new percentages that I gave you that are in that formula that's contained within the regional school agreement, based on wealth and not strictly population, and changing that 40.2 to 44.5, Hanson's assessment would go from $9.7 million up to $10.7 million, or roughly about $1,049,000 more a year. Okay, and Whitman's would of course come down because their percentage wouldn't be based on strictly the student population.
Now, Bruce, I don't mean to interrupt you here, but I just would like to state, just on basic math, doesn't Whitman have a larger population than the town of Hanson?
Yes, that's where the 59.8 came in. okay?
I see.
In the student population method was strictly that.
I see.
But using those other factors that I just mentioned, and the new wealth-based method that isn't based strictly on population, okay? They're saying that Hanson shouldn't be paying, the Whitman shouldn't be paying 59.8% anymore. They should be paying 55.5%, which would come out, instead of 14.4 million, will come out to 14.3 million. So as a result, Hanson would be saddled with an extra 10% of the assessment and an extra $1 million. And that's it in a nutshell. So that's why when the selectmen recently found this out about 3 or 4 weeks ago, when the superintendent of schools appeared before the Board of Selectmen and told them, oh, by the way, you know, you voted for that Whitman-Hanson Regional School Agreement, and come fiscal 2029, when we're deciding the budget, this is going to have a financial effect on the town of Hanson.
So we're on the hook for this money?
Not really, because any amended school agreement, any amendment to a regional school agreement per the terms of the original school agreement requires 2 towns to approve it. Whitman passed over this article at their May town meeting, so 2 towns have not approved it. Therefore, it defaults to the method that we've always used. And the 1992 regional school agreement is still in effect.
Okay.
So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. So if you want to avoid a serious financial crisis to the town of Hanson, at least temporarily, obviously, go to the town meeting and vote yes on Article 22, because that will rescind the vote that we took, take us back to square one, to the 1992 agreement, where we really are anyway. But you know, that will solidify our situation and take us back to the regional school system, regional agreement, to the method that we've always used and felt that was fair and equitable, and both towns have always felt that way.
And if we either choose to vote no or not choose to not show up for this meeting, what would be the ramifications of that?
You could possibly have some people there that think it's perfectly fine to and great to use the wealth-based method instead of the and they could. I'm not saying this could happen, but they could stack the meeting, and that attempt to rescind our vote could go down the tubes.
I see.
Whitman could go back to their town meeting in May, approve it, and that would be it.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
So what's the dollar amount that the town would be on the hook for if people were to vote no?
Based on the 2020 assessment, and I have no idea what the 2021 assessment is, but you know everything goes up, it would be even more money. And where's Hanson going to come up with $1,049,000?
Can't get
Are they
blood out
going
of
to
a stone.
delete their entire stabilization fund?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
in their savings account
No.
and pay for this?
No.
Are they going to go back to the voters and ask the voters to approve an override, which would certainly be a lot more than $1,049,000, because you'd have to provide for the future as well, correct? And so that puts Hanson in a financial crisis at a time when Whitman is having its own financial crisis. Okay. So, okay, let's move on to the next article for discussion. And that, Ben, is going to be Article 4, which is to see if the town will vote to amend Article 7 of the May 2018 annual town meeting. And that involves the funding of the transfer station. I don't know if you were at the last May's town meeting, but at last May's town meeting, the budget of the Board of Health for the transfer station was cut by roughly $64,000, which was supposed to come out of taxation to fund the entire amount of salaries. And it was cut by that amount to provide additional funding from taxation that could go into the school assessment to help pay for the 8.5% increase in the school assessment for fiscal 2020. We were promised at that town meeting that we would return to October, where hopefully that money could come back into the budget to fund the transfer station, which everybody refers to very passionately as the town dump, they like to call it, for the entire fiscal year. So for the first time that I've ever gone to town meeting, the transfer station was shortchanged
So
about $64,000.
did I hear this correctly, Bruce? We're robbing Peter to pay Paul with this one?
That's what we basically did at the, but we were given the promise that we would come back and fund the transfer station. But I want to remind everybody,
Now, Bruce, also, I remember not too long ago that when in regards to the transfer station, to get a dump sticker, it didn't cost you anything. And nowadays, we pay for that. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Yeah.
We pay, they've instituted, in order to raise some more funds to support the transfer station, the Board of Health now imposed a sticker fee of $30 for 3 years, so it's not bad. It comes to like almost, it's less than $1 a month if you divide it over 3 years.
Sure.
And a lot of people still think it's a great deal to go to the transfer station, pay for the $2 bag like I do. It cost me about $104 and change for the plastic bags, plus the $10. So I'm still way ahead of the game. If I went to curbside, it would cost me over $300.
Sure, sure.
So a lot of people like that convenience and the fact that the transfer station is open 5 days a week, Mondays, Tuesdays, Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays. But I should point out, even if we go and put the amount of money that they want us to put back in there, which is $60,000, and we cut $61,000 out of salaries, that leaves us $21,000 short of where we should be. And that $21,000, if it's not amended, an amendment is not made to this article, will force the transfer station to close Monday and Tuesdays, starting January 1, and only be opened Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays for the first time in history.
So three days out of the
It would be
week.
3 days out of the week. So I would urge everybody to get to town meeting and hopefully try to get that $21,000 back, or at least a portion of it, so they can be at least open on part of the days on Mondays and Tuesdays for the convenience. And it's almost a bait and switch, because they put out these stickers and charge us $30 per vehicle for a sticker.
Right.
And everybody assumed buying a sticker and the transfer station is going to be open those 5 days.
That's right.
Now they've gone back on their word, and it's only going to be open 3 days a week.
When originally our town taxes paid for the transfer station.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. About 20 years ago, we voted a $200,000 override to support the dump, or the transfer station. And that's been in our tax levy and our tax base, helping to pay for the transfer station for the last 20 some odd years. And if you take that $200,000 and you compound it at 2.5% under Proposition 2.5,
Right.
because you're allowed to raise your tax base by 2.5% a year,
Sure.
that $200,000 is now worth more than $300,000. And we were only slated to use about $86,000 of that for the transfer station. The rest is paid for by the plastic bags in the enterprise account. So you figure it out. So over the years, that $200,000 has gone to other places, which I'm sure you're not happy with as a town citizen.
As a taxpayer, no, it's not thrilling, to say the least.
Yep.
Yep.
So that's the second article that we wanted to discuss. So now we'll move on, Ben, to the next article I had in here. And there's over 30 articles here in the town meeting warrant. The next one is an interesting one. And it may not look that controversial on the surface, but as somebody who's been around town government for quite a while, I consider this controversial. We have an elected town moderator in the town of Hanson. We've had one since we became a town in 1820.
Right.
And since 1820, the moderator has always served a one-year term. When you go to the town ballot at the town election, you look at the top of the ballot, and there's the moderator position.
Right.
Most other elected officials in the town serve 3-year terms, with the exception of the planning board that serves 5-year terms. But the town moderator has always served a 1-year term. Article 24 is to see if the town will vote to change the term of the moderator from 1 year to 3 years, effective the next annual town election on May 16, 2020, or take any action in relation thereto. Seems like a rather generic article. Why wouldn't somebody be in favor of this?
Well, Bruce, in my opinion, what I'm hearing there is if you change a term limit from 1 year to 3 years, that could potentially pose some biasness within the Board of Selectmen. The reason for, in my opinion, what I'm seeing is if you leave it at 1 year, there is no biasness. You can either be reelected in each year,
Right.
or elect somebody else in. It gives you that option and opportunity to keep it an open forum. I believe once you close that, you could perhaps create an uneven playing field, for lack of a better word.
I think you're right, because my opinion on this is this, and I'm not saying it's true of the current town moderator. I think he does a very good job in reflecting the non-bias and a neutral position, which a town moderator should have, because he's running the town meeting, and he wants to give equal stead to both sides of an issue, so that people are allowed to talk on the pro side and the con side. And I think this was put into effect to elect him on an annual basis, because if you had a town moderator who's obviously showing favoritism throughout a town meeting, which he's supposed to maintain a neutral position,
Right.
you know, and you saw that, and that would give the town the opportunity to remove him from office after 1 year. I'd also like to point out that in addition to running the town meeting in accordance with the laws of the Commonwealth and the bylaws that govern the procedures of town meeting, the town moderator also has full authority to appoint all 7 members of the Finance Committee. And if people don't know what the Finance Committee's duties are, the Finance Committee's responsibility is to review each and every article and budget article that becomes before town meeting, and make a judgment and pass a recommendation on to the town meeting on what they feel is in the best interest of the voters of Hanson.
I see.
And if you ended up with a town moderator who was stacking the Finance Committee with only people based on his political points of view, you would have this 7-member committee agreeing on everything, rather than interjecting the feelings and the comments and the information that are coming from the people of Hanson.
Which is the biasness that I was expressing
biasness,
earlier.
yes.
Yes, absolutely.
So on those 2 factors alone, I'm going the other way with this. I want to keep it at a 1 term, and I think Sean Keeley does a good job.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm judging it on the position itself, and that he's not always going to be there.
Right.
Okay.
And I agree. I believe 1 year would be logical to leave it the way it is. So.
Okay, so let's move on to Article 29 while we still have some time left. And a half an hour doesn't go very, very long.
No.
But I appreciate you being here to give a citizen perspective.
Well, thanks for having me, Bruce.
Article 29 is to see if the town will vote to amend the wage and personnel bylaws and add a new section 12D as follows. The Board of Selectmen and the town administrator shall be permitted to authorize granting of newly hired employees up to 15 days of vacation leave based on prior experience in a similar position. Employees granted additional vacation leave on prior experience shall not have their vacation increased until they have 5 years of continuous service to the town of Hanson, at which time they may be granted additional days of vacation leave or take any other action in relation thereto. It's hard to act on this without knowing what's already in the classification and compensation bylaw. So I looked it up, and this is it. If you come under professional positions, okay, you right away after your 6 months of probationary period, you get your 3 weeks. So this obviously applies to all other categories. So let's say on all other categories, this is what happens. Once you complete 6 months of continued service, you get 5 days. After 1 year, you get 10 days. Okay? And after 5 years, you get 15 days. So what this basically does is move up the 3 weeks vacation that you would ordinarily get after 5 years,
Okay.
and it moves it up to the first year. Okay? So after a year, that person is automatically getting an extra week all the way up to 5 years.
So adding a week each year up to 5 years.
You get that extra week each year. So you get, instead of getting your 3 weeks after 5 years, you get your 3 weeks after 1 year. You get your 3 weeks after 1 year.
Oh, so they're decreasing the vesting period to 3 years.
That's right.
Okay.
So, what say you?
Well, my understanding, I briefly did take a moment to read that, and I was led to believe that was from the get-go. Once they were hired, they were going to receive that, because it was originally
That would be a good question to ask, because normally you would have to wait 6 months. Is this something they're going to grant to the person right away without that 6-month probationary period?
Right.
And it would depend on everybody is okay with it, that person getting an extra 1 week. 1 week a year, instead of the 2 weeks that they would get from after the first year to the 5th year,
Right.
and getting that extra week from the first year to the 5th year.
Right. Right.
All right, and the last one I had was, there's an article on to eliminate these single-use plastic bags. If you vote on that article, which is Article 31, these would be non-existent. The only reason these are non-existent, you could take the ones you have, bring them into Shaw's or some other place that normally disperses these, and you can still use them as long as you bring them in yourself. Shaw's can no longer give these out. They would have to give something of a paper product or something else that's recyclable, or you could have a stitched bag to bring in, and you could do that.
Interesting, because I recall years ago when they first implemented the plastic bags, these are the same people who now no longer want the plastic bags and are wanting to go back to paper. I find that to be very interesting, to say the least.
Right.
Yeah.
And the very next article will eliminate what we know as styrofoam.
Yes.
So the places like the Golden Roll or places like that in Hanson can't give out a to-go order and something that's styrofoam, or you can't go to the Dunkin' Donuts and get a styrofoam.
Or to the Venus 3 when you have
Okay.
your take-home stuff.
Well, this is
They
it.
offer it
So
as well.
those
Yeah.
are kind of like two controversial articles, because there's some people that are gung-ho with that. There's other people who think that, well, this is my right, et cetera. So those should be some interesting articles and produce some interesting discussion on town meeting floor. Okay, I want to thank you very much for joining us here on another episode of Hanson UnFiltered. I'd also like to thank my guest host,
Thanks for having me, Bruce.
Mr. Benjamin Fletcher, who offered some really valuable citizen perspective on these articles to come before town meeting on October 7th of this coming week. Hope to see you there, and it starts at 7:30 at the middle school. So long, and see you next time.